Happy Monday, everyone. I'm Alice Adams. I'm the Associate Director of the Center for Faculty Development and Excellence. We are pleased that this is the first event that we've co-sponsored with the K Club, and we are very glad to learn about their work and programming, so I'm hoping that we can do some more cooperation in the future. Our thanks to Stacy and Barbara Kilborn for their partnership on this. And if you are new to the CFDE and are not familiar with our programming and opportunities, I encourage you to visit our website at cfde.emory.edu. They also sign up for our listserv through that website, cfde.emory.edu. So to this panel discussion on failure to success, a practical guide. Rejection and failure are unavoidable aspects of an academic career, but rejection can also be an essential byway on the road to success. Failure can make us stronger and smarter, even though it might feel like it at the time. Our speakers today will tell us about their strategies when you don't get that grant or the book contract falls through, and other challenges and roadblocks, and what it is to be gained. So thank you for your stories, our four panelists, and how you kept from getting discouraged. I'm going to introduce them in the order in which they will speak, and then we'll just turn the podium right over to our first presenter, which is Dr. Carlos Rio. He is Hubert Professor Chair of the Department of Global Health at the Rollins School of Public Health and Professor of Medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases in the Emory School of Medicine. He's also Program Director of the Emory AIDS International Training and Research Program and Co-Director of the Emory Center for AIDS Research. He's been the Emory faculty since 1996. His risks include the epidemiology of opportunistic infections in HIV and other immune deficiencies, the epidemiology and transmission dynamics of HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases, issues related to early diagnosis of HIV, access to care, and compliance with antiretrovirals. He is on numerous national and international advisory committees, organizational boards, and journal editorial boards. He has co-authored 5 books, 30 book chapters, and over 150 scientific papers. His efforts focus on the access to care and barriers to care among HIV-infected persons in the U.S., as well as healthcare resource utilization by HIV-infected patients. He does epidemiologic research on opportunistic infections and HIV and AIDS-associated risk behaviors, as well as adherence and impact of therapy on behavior. Finally, he is interested in the spectrum and impact of AIDS in developing countries and issues related to access to care in resource-poor settings. Dr. Rio will be our first speaker. Is Professor Dunbar. She is the Charles Howard Candler Professor of Cardiovascular Nursing and Associate Dean for Academic Advancement in the Emory School of Nursing. She's at faculty since 1988. She is a cardiovascular nurse researcher and educator whose program of research focuses on self-management and psychosocial responses to serious cardiac illness. Her current work is focused on testing integrated self-care approaches for persons with heart failure and diabetes, and testing an intervention to improve outcomes for heart failure family caregivers. She completed an NINR-funded study testing family-focused intervention to improve self-care by patients chronic heart failure, and a clinical trial of psychoeducational intervention to improve outcomes, those depression, anxiety, functional status, of high-risk arrhythmia patients treated with implantable cardioverter defibrillator, an ICD. She was a co-investigator in an NHLBI-funded partnership between Emory and Morehouse Universities to reduce cardiovascular health disparities. She's also an active volunteer for the American Heart Association's Council of Cardiovascular Nursing and served as the chair for the council in 2009 through 11. She is a former president of the American Association of Critical Care Nurses and is a member of the editorial board of several major nursing journals. She has also received the Karen A. Lembright Award from the American Heart Association for her contributions to cardiovascular nursing research. So Professor Dunbar will be our second presenter. Third is Carla Freeman. She is Associate Dean of Emory College of Arts and Sciences, a Professor of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, and she's an Associated Faculty in Anthropology and Latin American and Caribbean Studies. She has been on the Emory faculties for 22 years, since 1995. The recent of her multiple books is titled Entrepreneurial Selves, Neoliberal Respectability, and the Making of a Caribbean Middle Class, from Duke University Press in 2014. Her general research are culture and political economy of globalization and development, anthropology, affect, economy, and the changing nature of work and life. And she has worked on 2 new studies of the cultural specificities of romantic love and changing transnational labor circuits of Indian IT professionals. Research has been supported by multiple grants from the National Science Foundation, the Wenner Gren Foundation, am I saying that right? Wenner Foundation for Anthropological Research, the Fulbright, and the and her articles have appeared in such journals as American Anthropologist, Cultural Anthropology, Science, the Journal of Women, Culture and Society, Feminist Studies and Critique of Anthropology. Professor Freeman is the editor, a co-editor, I guess, with a new Oxford University Press series of contemporary ethnography called Issues of Globalization, and the president-elect of the Association. Speaker, Greg Waymer. He is the Asa Griggs Candler Professor of Accounting in the Goizueta Business School, and he's been a member of the Goizueta faculty since 1990. His specializations include the spontaneous emergence of accounting standards through knowledge sharing, spontaneity in accounting, accountability and language as mechanisms to produce trust in economic exchange, of the FASB's conceptual framework, of the role of accounting in periods of economic crisis, emergence of U.S. information intermediaries in the pre-SEC era. He's served as the president of the Financial Accounting and Reporting Section and vice president of the research for the American Accounting Association. And he has served as president-elect and president of the American Accounting Association in 2011 through 2010, 11, and 2012, respectively. So thank you to our speakers, and if you move, Professor Del Real will start us off.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for being here. What I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes or so, just give you a bit of a personal thought about this whole issue of what it means, the issue of failure and success. And I think Winston Churchill saying that success consists of going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And I think it's important that you remember that one thing you not lose is your enthusiasm. I think failure is inevitable. It's inevitable in life, and it's going to be part of an academic career, but through phases, right? And the first thing is denial. You know? It's just admit that we made a mistake, that we need to change. Change your losses. You say, I want to draw the line. This is where I don't want to go. And then sometimes you just make it up. You say, well, let's reinterpret. This is somebody else's failure. This is not my failure. Yours didn't get it or whatever. But it's not. I never got what my problems are. And I think it's important that we all. The most important thing in failure is actually recognizing that we failed. That something went wrong. Now, in academia, I love to talk about our successes. And in academia, celebrate them. We say, oh, this person got this grant, and this person did this, and this person's the best teacher. But we never talk about failures, and somehow I think we need to also mention, here's a list of faculty who submitted grants and didn't get it this year. But they're hard at doing it, and that's okay, and I think we need to be more. So I'll talk a bit about some of my failures. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll make it personal. I had finished training, and I wanted to go into public health, and I got accepted into EIS. But the deputy service training at CDC. But J1 exchange visa, CDC couldn't take me. They couldn't change that. It didn't work out, and so I failed. I failed to achieve something that I wanted to do, and sort of figure out what I wanted to do and what to do with life going on. Since that door was closed, right? And it ends that I ended up going to Mexico, where I'm from, with the idea of going for 2 years, and ended up staying for about 8 or 7 or whatever. And it was a really easy decision because, in fact, all that I've done in life is because I went back to Mexico and I worked with some really important people. Julio Frank, who was the dean, who later became the dean of the School of Public Health at Harvard, and now is the president of the University of Miami. Chaim Pulvera, who now is the sort of the director of the Global Health Center at UCSF. Fernando Zayas, who was at Pajón. King Jorge. In fact, that's how I got to meet Jim Kern, because Jim Kern was at CDC, and I was in Mexico in charge of AIDS, and we ended up doing a border program, and that's my current boss. So, in fact, it was a really smart decision to do this, and it totally changed my career. So I got asked by the incoming administration, 1994, the election that was incoming administration, and Dr. Sepulveda and I were asked to put together a national health plan for the administration, and we worked together to putting this book out, was the National Health and Social Security Plan, and we were really sure that he was going to be the Minister of Health or the Secretary of Health, and I was going to be the Undersecretary of Health, and we were going to this plan. The positions went to other people. They did our plan. Our plan really got implemented, and in fact, one of the things that we proposed in our plan was something called a conditional cash transfer program to combating poverty that is still recognized as one of the most successful in the world, and a lot has been written about it. But again, it was disappointing. It was not what I wanted to happen. But because I looked at other opportunities and decided to return to Emory in 1996. So again, if I hadn't had that failure, right? I think I was going to do something, it didn't happen, and the outcome was better, I think. I think when you think about academia, failure is a repeat offender. And the two repeat offenders are clearly grants and papers, right? And I think grants hurt a hell of a lot more than papers. I think you need strategies, and first of all is a mindset. Don't take failure as a blow to your self-esteem. Don't think stupid reviews. Why don't they understand me? But you think about how can I get better? What, even if the most stupid reviewer, and we need to figure out a way that he understands it or she understands it, right? There was a grant. I remember I didn't get funded an oral transmission of HIV. Background to the grant and being submitted to a journal as a review paper, and in fact has been cited, over 100 times. And I would have never written that paper if that grant had not been, and allowed me to write that paper. Again, don't personal critique. It's a critique about your work. Your night I tell people is, you're now playing the major. In the majors, I like baseball a lot. So, what is a good baseball hitter? What does he get? I mean, a superstar hits over 300, right? Most people are around 250, 200. So, if you get 1 out of every 4 grants, or every 5 grants, you're in the major leagues. If 1 out of every 3, you're a superstar. I mean, people, you need to realize that most of the times you're going to strike out. You're going to get on base, and occasionally you're going to get a perfect score. But most of the time, which is a home run. But most of the time, 1 out of every 3, 1 out of every 4 is what you're going to get. And others of what goes well. So borrow grants from other people. Say, hey, what did you grant? You seem to be more successful. Let me know what you're doing that I'm not doing the same way. And again, just looking at, this is comments where all the grants are listed. Those are just some of my grants. But see there a circle that says not discussed, not discussed, not discussed. That means that I get scored. They were rated in the low 50th percentile of the grants submitted at that time. That's okay. It's going to happen, and you just need to take pride of the ones that do well and some that don't do well. The one about Project Retain, actually, it's another one that we got funded, and this one is another one that we got funded. Again, some funded, some don't, and that's life. But the only thing that's going to assure you is the only grants you're not going to get are the ones you don't apply for. So we have to play to win, right? The people who have very little experience with professional rejections. College and, grades and, got, Phi Beta Kappa, and then you got great SATs or GMAT scores or MCAT scores, and then you publish everything you can. And you start being a faculty and you submit a couple of grants and they don't get funded, and you say, I'm not good for this. I'm not good at this. This is not what I'm good at, because you've never failed. And I really think that something we have to do in our classrooms is help students to fail more frequently. We have to teach people that failure is okay. But do that, and I think, this is my personal bias. I call this the T-ball generation. A ball and a little tee, and they don't learn how to strike out. They always hit the ball, right? They're in the tee until they hit it. And we have to let our students learn how to fail. We have to put them in the T-ball. Because if we rescue them every time, then when they become faculty, they've never used this. And actually, it's a really important thing to have. Not in advance, you just don't dive into the ocean and hope to swim. Grant, you commit a necessary time. You seek feedback before you submit. You know, I still send my grants to people to review, and I want their feedback. And then if it didn't work, you talk to your project professor. You say, hey, you know, what did I do wrong? What suggestions do you have? You get advice. And then what do you give your summary statement? And once you submit a grant, you get a critique on it. Well, a summary statement. Well, I have a routine. We do it in a safe space, which is like my arm with the door closed, you know, that I can read carefully because it's going to hurt. So you want to be that you can scream and be angry, and that's okay. I get wine, and I wine before I read it. I'll be at work too, but you know, something to sort of, you know, put you in the right mood. And you get a good review. That's okay. You want to just be in the right mood. You just don't read it in your office while you're doing something else. You really need to get prepared to do it. And you look at them systematically, and it's the areas that the reviewers found both strengths and weaknesses. I mean, it's really good to read the part that says, this is an excellent group of investigators who have it. Yeah, but you start by reading, this is a really good of investigators. You say, oh, at least I got a good group. That the idea was wrong, but I got a good group. So you put both the strengths and weaknesses. You just don't focus on the weaknesses, right? And difficulty deciphering the comments. You ask for, you get somebody, hey, help me understand what they were trying to say. And sometimes that's a project officer. Talk about their failures. I would encourage you to talk about your failures. Talk about them openly. Tell people, look, I submitted this grant, didn't do well. What can we do to improve it? This afternoon, we're meeting with a faculty member that submitted a grant and didn't do well, and we're putting together to figure out how to make him successful. He was kind enough to say, this didn't go. I need help. And that's what we need to do for people. And failure is a very good learning experience. I think we need to do more to teach failure in our programs and to our students and to our faculty. Make an error. The quicker you formulate an action plan, it's how you're going to get back. So really, it's not failing. It's how you get over it, how you work out of it. Because how you deal with failure that determines how successful you're going to be. One of the biggest secrets to success is actually operating inside your strength zone, but outside your comfort zone. That's how you succeed. That's how you, and you're going to fail if you do that. I mean, people that are successful are not comfort zone. They're doing very extraordinary, strange things, but at the same time, they're failing in the process, right? So, you know, sometimes I talk to faculty, junior faculty, students, and they think they have the plans, and their life is like this, right? And you have to remember that it's actually more like this. It's going to go up in some tough times, and that this straight line to your goal is not going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. So, my success too. I think now, what is success about? Well, you have trust and support from others, and the body is excellent mentors. So mentors, find the right mentors. I think that's key to success number one. Number, it's connectivity. You don't work alone. Network, collaborate. Opportunities to work with others who are interesting, who are fun, who are complementary to what you do. You know, look, take on the tough challenges and take risks. You're going to fail, take risks, but if you don't take risks, you're not going to fail, and therefore you're not going to be successful. And follow your passion. Of failure. It's okay to fail, and I think we need to remind that to people over and over and over. And I love this quote from Michael Jordan saying, you know, anybody's going to argue that this guy was one of the most successful, if not the most successful basketball player. And he says, I have more than 9,000 shots in my career. I lost 3 games, 26 times I've been trusted with a game-winning shot, and I missed it. I over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed. And again, those shots, he failed, and that's why he succeeded. So you need to realize that in order to be Michael Jordan, you're going to have to fail and miss a lot of shots. It's okay. And with that, happy to take.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. And I'm really appreciative of the CFDE and the K Club for sponsoring this session and for inviting me to share some experiences with you. And I tried to also speak to some of my colleagues about some of the experiences they had so I could share a few more anecdotes as well as some examples of things we've dealt with. So the talk from failure to success. The word failure, I really don't like that word. I don't think anyone likes, kind of sees that word resonates with them, not with the people who are here in this room. So I like to think of it as maybe not now or not this, but it's something that we do know that there are roadblocks and dips. So I have a calendar that has some supposed to be inspirational sayings, and so this is what came up this week. Don't be afraid to fail. You're already super good at it. So I'm like, well, thank you. But so some of the things that I think are the most I value for an academia are grants and manuscripts. And so those are two of the things that I'm going to focus a little bit more on in terms of failures and successes there. When you get a really crushing critique, and certainly I've had many of those from a manuscript or a grant, some of the things that have been helpful are to just step back. Once again, if you read it and it's difficult, and they're difficult because I've never had a manuscript or a grant accepted or funded on the first try. Now, some people have, and that's wonderful, but it's all that persistence that you've got to go back. So if it's really bad, I just step back and I put it aside and I pick another day. I get mad. I say, that's ridiculous. Blow off steam. That's a stupid reviewer. They just didn't see it. But then back to it better time. And I also will take a few minutes to reread the positive. As Carla said, the things that say, good things in the team or your environment or, the topic, the significance. So things that really are positive, and so refocus on why I'm doing this particular thing. What's my passion for this? Why do I care about people with heart failure who get admitted over and over? Or why do I care about a particular thing that I'm trying to write about? So that kind of gets your enthusiasm back up. So the next day, to pick it back up the next day. Now, some of my colleagues say, wait a week, wait a month. I think it just is going to depend on you, and if you can get to safe space, find that right time. Most of the time is of the essence when the tenure clock is ticking, right? So waiting might be the best thing, and we don't give a lot of what are the outcomes, the acceptances and the funding that frequently doesn't get such attention, which I think is totally correct, but that is what ends up being counted. So I think you have to balance the timing. Don't wait too long. Make a list of everything that I'm going to address. You just make a list of things that you are going to revise, points of contention, certainly, that things you don't agree with in the review, and also points for revision. And points of contention are interesting. Reviewers really don't like to be told that they're wrong or that they missed something, but sometimes they are. And there's kind of this tack that you can do in your revision and your response to reviewers that might say, we appreciate this point, but we respectfully disagree, and believe that this manuscript, for example, provides a unique perspective or changes the paradigm or something that you can say, and then you can say, we have tried to make this clearer. So sometimes you have to thank your reviewers, respectfully disagree, and then say how you're going to, clarify. I've had reviewers say things like, a biosketch wasn't included. Well, and it was. So, you're like, we're sorry that it was apparent and envisioned, and you say, and made sure it was there. Saying, you idiot, it was there. So, and then, just thinking about those things. I think it's helpful to talk to your mentor and co-authors and others about the revision. Others can certainly have helped me reword things and revise things so that they're not maybe as defensive or as angry sounding. And that's really important, is to do your revision, respond to reviewers, and go back and edit that again and make sure that that's toned down. I find that talking to others is really helpful, and they can sometimes help me clarify a point, especially if they haven't been involved in the project or they're from another discipline, if willing to do that. And I have a colleague who says she always goes to an attorney friend because that person helps her make a better case. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then because I'm just action-oriented, and some people cook differently, as you heard, denial and those things, I just get started. Just get back in there and get started. Strategies in talking with others, and I'll give you some examples from myself as well, is that sometimes manuscripts, you make a completional analysis. So you have to ask, do you have the right statistician? Do you need to add more statistical help to the team for that particular manuscript? And it'd be the right journal. And I found that I have a colleague who has a list of journals, and they just go down the list. They don't make any minor revisions. But if that journal didn't accept it, they go to the next, and they just go down until it gets accepted. That's not a strategy that I find helpful. Have that many journals in nursing, and so we have to go back in sometimes, and that is the best place to go. But if it's not right, then select another. True with grants. And for example, we recently submitted an NSF grant for altering an intervention for heart failure patients to make technologically web-based intervention versus a face-to-face counseling. We sent it to NSF because they had a call for technological based approaches to measuring clinical outcomes. And what we found was what was really of interest to NSF was technology in the backbone of the way things were going to be done, not the real focus I had on the clinical intervention. So that wasn't the right mechanism, but now we do have something to work with and can go to more clinically focused funding agents. And again, setting up the meeting with the team and going through the points that critique, especially for a grant, and working with the disciplinary team to figure out what really can be done to address a critique. Here's another example where I was working with a colleague, and she wanted to do a family-focused study for survivors of stroke and their family caregivers. And submitted a grant, but she really did not have preliminary data. She had good data on the stroke survivor, but not on the family. And so, in order of your chicken and egg thing, well, I need funding to do the study to get data, but they didn't. So the team came together and helped her think about how she could append her study to an ongoing clinical trial. And there was already an infrastructure of a trial, and they helped her figure out how she could get that preliminary data without a lot of funds. In fact, it was basically sweat she had to put into it to collect the data, but it worked out. And later, she did get an R01, so that was great. So several people also, when I asked them what they found helpful, they said they stepped back and did something completely different so that they could get new ideas. And it is amazing how when you step back and do something that you really enjoy, part of your leisure, just work on else and then come back to that project that's so crushing that you can come up with some new ideas. So given your time away from it. So here are other examples from serving as a mentor. And is examples of experiences that you've had when you're a mentor, telling your mentee, you know, I lived through this. You will get over it, and that have been worse reviews that people have been able to overcome. So it's helpful to know that we all go through this and have these experiences. The stories that one of my colleagues told me had to do with getting a grant critique where the reviewer said, nobody cares about postpartum fatigue. No one's going to fund that because it's not really important. What they hear about is postpartum depression, because that's what costs the system. And so she was really annoyed because she knows postpartum fatigue is real to mothers. And so what she was able to do, though, was recraft her work to see postpartum depression, which fatigue is a critical piece. So by just reformulating and stepping back, and it's really hard to do because we love our topic and we love what we do, right? You're passionate, or you wouldn't be doing it. But sometimes the advice that you get from reviewers is good, and you know, we have to accept it gracefully. I find that talking to the program officer is critical, and the program officer that I've worked with over the years at NINR has been terrific. They have really helped me see sometimes perspective of the reviewer that I couldn't see. And here's an example. Sometimes here's an example of a recent grant we submitted where the reviewer kind of went crazy and said, you know, this does include this and that, and it doesn't have a palliative care perspective on these symptoms, and went on. Grant was not about palliative care, but the reviewer and the NINR priorities have palliative care in it. So the programmer told me, you had a rogue reviewer. They actually used those words. You had a rogue reviewer who went off on palliative care, and so what you have to do is pull them back into the fold, and you have to kind of that, you know, this is not a palliative care framework, it's a symptom science framework, and lead maybe to strong palliative care studies. So kind of, you know, but I thought that was really helpful because I was so upset. How am I going to ever address palliative care? But no, you don't have to. Just pull them back in and help them see what you're really after. So, and the other thing that the program officer they're usually expecting your call is if you think about the timeline and whether you really do have enough preliminary data. They don't want to fix your science. They don't want to address the scientific issues. They just want to give you guidelines on your resubmission and helping you address the critique. The other I have on here is to have two primary foci. So one of the things that has helped me is to have two programs of research, where one is focusing on complex cardiovascular issues, and the other is focusing on the patient, the family caregiver. And so there are times when I will submit a grant focused on heart failure patients. There are times when I will do a dyadic study, and there are times when I will focus on just the caregiver. And so I can be, while one is in review and I'm having to revise something, I can be working on the other one. I know this is running. So this is just a, you can think of this picture two ways. You can say, well, I'm looking in this mirror and I'm looking at what I aim to be, right? Or you can say, I'm looking in this mirror and I see I'm a cat at a lion, and I know I have the teeth or the knowledge or the skills to do what that lion needs to do. So it is time sometimes to step back and say, what additional knowledge and skills do I need that will help strengthen my ability to do the work. The other is, you are the lion for it. So, and this quote from says 15 priorities is the same as having none at all. So the idea there is again, focus in what's the priority, and always keep moving forward. Thank you.
Everyone. Happy spring. It's the first day of spring. I can feel the allergies. Well, there are going to be a number of themes that you're all hearing. I took very seriously this lovely invitation to talk about failure and the road to success. Storyteller. I'm an ethnographer. I don't have a PowerPoint for you. I'm just going to tell you a few stories. Carlos, I read some inspirational quotations about failure, and one that struck me, I like the Churchill quote as well, and I found a couple of others that I liked. One from Emerson, who said, "Our glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we do." Thomas Edison, who also said, "I failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. So I thought of these. One struck me, though, as you heard, I'm an ethnographer, I'm an anthropologist, I do most of my field work in the Caribbean. I found one Caribbean quote that I'll share with you that says, "Not beat a trial, but a failure." In other words, you can't succeed if you don't try. What struck me, though, was that I found very few quotes by women. And thinking a lot about of failure and how women in particular meet the challenges that all people face when they don't succeed at something. And I'm here upon my experience as the dean of the faculty, where I meet with, I think, 150 faculty members in the college for whom providence in one way or another. I oversee the tenure and promotion process, and a lot of faculty who are going through these really critical jobs in their career. I'm a teacher, and I work with undergraduate and graduate students all the time. I'm a mother. I have 2 teenage daughters who are confronting failures and successes. They are youth A students, but occasionally something goes awry. And so in all these different capacities, I thought a lot about how we face these bumps along the road. And so I thought what I would try to do is to both think somewhat analytically about the gender of failure and to give you a few examples from my own experience at 3 particular points in my own career. One of the things that strikes me about the gender of failure, the particular experience of shame that I hear a lot of women express. And this is not to say that men don't experience shame when they hit a roadblock, but I hear this especially from women at all different ages and career moments. One of our most senior faculty, and I won't name her, but to most of you, came to a meeting recently that we were doing a program review, and we were talking about the fact that in faculty self-evaluation at the end of every year, all in the College of Arts and Sciences fill out this very electronic self-report called the OFARS report. And in it, you account for all of the teaching you've done, all of the scholarship you've done, grants you've applied for, fellowships you've applied for, and then you know whether you've achieved them or not. And this is a person who has achieved the most extraordinary success that one could achieve in her field. She was nominated for many things that she didn't know her OFARS report. And we got that, and she said, "Oh, I would never mention things I didn't succeed at." And she talked about this sense of shame at not getting the honor that somebody thought she was eligible for and had put her forward for, and then she had gotten it. Rather feeling just simply really proud that somebody had noted her ability, she experienced more the failure. It's the same experience that many of us have as teachers when say, you teach a class of 50 students and you have 5 evaluations that are really negative. You write in on those and you feel horrible. And that 45 students loved your class. And again, this is a human reaction. It also, I think, has a particular dimension to it. Okay. I'm not a psychologist. It's beyond me to talk. I've read a bit about this because it interests me both personally and analytically, but I'm not going to share with you my own theories about shame and why women in particular turn aggression, anger, resentment inward, and it becomes instead. We can talk about that in some other venue, perhaps. I'm going to share with you 3 junctures of failure and how to deal with them. As a way of just illustrating that when you look at a CV, you see the successes, and I've been to experience a fair number of those. Really dramatic failure in the academy. I'm not to my undergraduate days. I'm starting with graduate school. Was as an anthropologist, I wrote my first set of grant proposals to do my dissertation research, and I applied to all of the usual suspects and feedback I started to get was from the National Science Foundation, and I got 3 reviews. I happily send the reviews to you as a candidate. Reviews, I got the highest evaluation possible. Really delighted, and I thought people really project, and I'm so excited to do this research. And the third gave me the lowest possible rating of a poor. And I'm sure it was a man. And again, I got really paranoid and really angry and really upset. And I read this review and I could just hear this. And he got it completely wrong. It was the quintessence of this stupid review. And he misprized my sample, he just didn't read it carefully. I did some of what my colleagues have recommended. I sat in a quiet place. I can't remember if I had a glass of wine or not. I tried to collect my thoughts. I contacted my dissertation advisor. I probably cried a little bit. And it was long before the internet and email, and I picked up the phone and I called. And again, I hadn't gotten any advice about a program officer or whatever. I don't know whether that is typically, advisable for a graduate student, but I picked up the phone and I called the number that was at the bottom of the letter to the Social and Behavioral Sciences Division, of which anthropology is a part, expecting to an assistant on the phone who could know how to reach out to someone. And I got a guy named Stuart Plattner, who was head of anthropology, on the phone. Plattner here, and being really rattled, thinking, I didn't mean to call you, Dr. Plattner. I just thought I was going to get an assistant who could help you. And I said, well, I've just read the reviews of my dissertation, grant proposal, and I'm troubled because one of the reviewers who I assume to have, sunk my candidacy seems to have really my proposal. And in dismissing me, he said, well, hang on a minute. And he pulled my paper folder. We didn't submit electronically in those days. And he pulled out, and I sat on the phone patiently waiting, and he read these 3 reviews, and he said, you're right. And within minutes, I had my funding. And again, I don't know if this was routine, if this happened to very many people, but it was a real lesson to me in not just quietly at night and sinking my head into my pillow, which is also what I felt like doing. Now I'm going to show you another experience in which I had a different impulse. And I feel, and I got 3 different grants, and I had bumps along the way of the field work, which I won't share with you. My second major failure had tenure already, and I had a sabbatical leave, actually more than a sabbatical leave. I had a fellowship at our Center for Humanistic Inquiry, this incredible opportunity to spend a year working on a book project. And I decided to spend the bulk of that year working on a kind of greatest hits article of what would then become my book. And myself working on this article. And I thought it was really the most piece of work I had ever done. At the invitation of the editor of the flagship journal of my field, who had heard me present a version of this at our national meetings, I sent this greatest hits piece to an ethnologist, our big journal. And I, again, got a couple of really great reviews and one real critical review. And it went down. I didn't get an R and a revise and resubmit. It was just turned on, even though two of the reviews were really good. And I was devastated. I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was demoralized. I was depressed. I was angry. And that article and those reviews in my drawer, and I taught my classes, and I didn't tell anybody. I just felt so ashamed and completely undone. I sat in my drawer with those reviews for almost 2 years. At the point that a new member of the faculty joined the anthropology department, and we got to talking about something, and he remembered this paper somehow, shared with him this story. Reviews. And he said, I don't know how to turn this down. 2 of these reviews are phenomenal. The third review seems so petty and so small and so easily fixable. I think you should editor up. In conversation, I called the editor up and I said, you know, would you be willing to talk about this? She said, absolutely. Conversation, and she said, send me your revised version. I spent 1 day doing visions, and I sent it to her now by email, which has been developed in an email. And 9 months it appeared in print. That story was, for me, I was without the kind of mentor I needed in 2 intervening years. I really did not have a network to help me handle that rejection. And one really powerful influence conversation with one of our colleagues turned things around for me, and it gave me the confidence to finish my book ultimately, because this was the heart of my book. And I thought, if this is rejected, well then, you know, where is the graph going to be? Okay, failure. And it's a current failure. Ahead, mentors to becoming the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty. I'm in a very different environment right now, and I have a really different life, a different rhythm to my job that doesn't allow very much time for research, which is really trying to figure out. And in the first year of this position in the office, I was invited to submit an article to a major volume on neoliberalism, you know, kind of one of the main themes that I work on, and to contribute kind of anchor of my work to this huge volume that the whole cast of stars of the broader interdisciplinary field of economists, political scientists, political theorists, sociologists, anthropologists, everyone who's the biggest name was going to be in this volume. And they asked me to write this chapter on affect and neoliberalism. And I was really honored. And I said, and I thought, this is exactly what I need. And my year just got by other things, and couldn't find the time to write the piece. And so this present failure, you can probably hear, it just literally makes me want to weep, because I had to say to this editor, I do it. I've failed. I thought I could do it. I promised this thing. I can't do it. How am I dealing with this? It's a very current conundrum for me. And in a way, it gets back to our two previous presentations. That way, one of the critical elements to succeeding in the face of these challenges is collaboration. And I've read that it's almost impossible for me to find the uninterrupted time to do the kind of work, the reading and the writing that I want to do. Collaborating, and I'm some positive experiences, I'm somehow better insist upon carving some time when I to be accountable to a co-author. For whatever reason, in my own psyche, it's harder for me to do that for myself than it is when I also have obligation to another person. And I've proposed to a colleague of mine at UCLA to co-author this very piece that I had promised to this volume and it for a journal, and hopefully it will get published. Who knows? Anyway, so I end with that sense of, the conundrum, the fact that failure is not something that we ever really leave behind, no matter how old or how advanced in our career we become. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Delight to see all of you here. I'm taking a slightly different tack on this topic. And I will remarks by telling you what I tell my students counting, the way that I sort of explain whenever I make a screw up, because I'm not 100% precise with numbers. I said my mother and my paternal brother were in the family. I both worked at it for years. I'm a poet philosopher trapped inside an accountant's body, coming at it from that perspective today. So, talk about, first off, what's the problem we're talking about today? What is the essence of the issue? Secondly, make some remarks on motivation, which I think is actually the big question that underlies all this. How do we approach what it is that we do? A fairly useful suggestion.
Maybe you can be able to answer this question.
The way that I think about this is that I really have any great pearls of wisdom to pass to you. What I'm going to do instead is to sort of talk about my general view of life, because of circumstances that I had to face, mostly personal, but they were connected to my professional. I think what we're talking about today is what kind of perspective is conducive for a junior young scholar about their academic life, and how to then use that to deal with kind of challenges that invariably arise for all of us. And so it's fascinating to hear everybody else's story, because everybody has problems of not getting things the way that you want them to be. And so I'm going to talk about add to today's discussion. Probably not very much. What I'm going to try to do is give some perspective that I've picked up over a number of years, and it goes back to the mid-1980s. My background. I have a B from the University of Chicago. It's basically in economics, like everybody in the business there in those days. I'm an economist. And I'll talk about a set of issues that arose for me in the late 1980s, and they were health-driven, right? So I had a diagnosis of something that could have turned out to be really, really bad, or something been really good. As it turns out, I have the best case scenario that nobody can tell that I have a problem, because it's not really a problem, right? It never really surface. So I advantage, right? I got a call, but I also got to sleep late. And what that means is that, everybody has experiences in their life where they have to step back and say, what's all about? What is it we're doing here? And how to sort of deal with that most effectively. And for me, I was at a time where there was a lot of frustration, stagnation, and stuff like that, and I felt like I wanted to walk away from academia. So the result, I spent a couple of years thinking pretty hard about the kind of life that I wanted to live, and went through all the nations that you expect going along with that. My main conclusion from that was that I had to do this work, had to come from inside, right? I could find people that were helpful to me, that I could talk to, having mentors and colleagues and stuff like that. That's really, really good advice. But at the end of the day, it's come from inside. It's got to be something that drives me to do this. Richard Feynman had it right when he said, no responsibility to live up to what other people think you ought to accomplish. And what that means was a period in his life, he was very, very young, just entered academia after working on Alamos atomic bomb project. He was a physicist. And he got this incredible to go to Princeton and be part of their Institute for Advanced Study. And he was just overwhelmed by it. And he was going through his life where he was blocked from getting things done, and he couldn't understand why he was getting this great offer, right? And then it clicked to him. He had no responsibility to be able to do what the other people thought that he had to do. It was up to him to define what that was. And a couple years ago, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues over in the business school, who's a very helpful person. I talk to her frequently. And she said, you don't care what other people think of you. And I said, yes and no. I know what other people think of me. It's just that I don't necessarily think about the kinds of things that I think about 10 or 15 years ago. So what I mean by that is that other people think that I'm a nice person who treats other people with dignity and respect. I think that's important, right? I want things that I'm thoughtful, that I don't give pat answers, that I actually consider what it is that they say to me. I'm a good listener, intelligent, think, hope, generous, caring, and I'm funny. So I'm all of those things, but the vast majority of days I'm actually none of those things. But those are the things that are aspirations. So the $4,000 question on the no side is, I don't really care what people think about the issues that I work on, the kinds of questions that I devote my life to. I do care if they offer me suggestions for making it better. I listen very carefully to those. Everybody here, I've had my share of travail, referees, and stuff like that, and I've come to the conclusion my best way to deal with that is to have an out-of-body experience with it from the standpoint of saying, what is it causing the referee to make this comment about the work that I've submitted? And most effective way to address the problem. And it may not necessarily be what the referee tells you to do, because they don't have the familiarity that you do with the projects. But try to figure out why it is that you care about what other people do. Use that constructively, but don't derail you. And I've had the sense that this has sort of gone through lots of the comments here. At some point in time, you have to sort of step back and say, I'm going to just go for this. And if it's a project ambitious and somebody doesn't like it, you think, they're probably, but I want to figure out why they're saying the things they're saying. So, my suggestions, focus on the work. That's where the satisfaction is. You won't get any great satisfaction out of networking with people at annual meetings, although that's a good thing that you do that. That's not really where the satisfaction is, right? Getting awards twice is a really good thing, and that in some regards that's a reflection of doing the right thing. But that's not what it's about either. It's in the work itself, the ideas, and that sort of stuff. Take some risks. Optimal number of mistakes is a positive number, not zero. Victory is not fulfillment, and you can be successful in life and good things. And those are important things to do. But that's not the same as being fulfilled, happy, and content with your life. And so a site there is by John Wooden, who was the most successful, didn't say that, the best basketball coach that ever lived. He said, I never talked about winning. It was about making sure that things were done the right way, that people were trying to be the best that they could be, even if they had ability than somebody else. That's the thing that's important. Be different. The idea somebody is sort of threatened by that you look the same or you don't think the same as somebody else. Don't worry about that. I've never seen anybody in my life who fell in love with someone else who they thought completely average on all possible dimensions. You got to be different. And so you have to figure out what is in the upside of what you're doing that you can really sort of push on. And then have some fun. There are 3 institutions in life for people like us. Mental institutions, prisons, and universities. Just thank God you found yourself in the best of those 3, and enjoy it. Take your work to do well. Get with good people that'll push you, sort of help you do your better work. But don't take it to heart, I'm not a good person because you're getting this bad comments. I sense that's a commonality in all of these talks this morning. And so I made it through without career success or failure once. And those are all important things to talk about, but that's not really what it's about. It's sort of how you figure out how to your life to be contented, and if you do that, you'll end up being successful at the end of the day. And there's massive amounts of good suggestions that have been made here. And so with that, I thank you, and I appreciate being invited.
I don't think we have enough time for questions. Our hour is up and our panelists have to be elsewhere. So, but I want to say thank you to all 3 of them. And Dr. Del Rio had to scoot out for another. But thank you to everyone who spoke today, and thanks to those of you who are in WebEx. Mostly